If you weren't the CEO's daughter, I wouldn't date you. You're such a plain girl.
He said that and splashed beer on my head. Whether it was the alcohol or not, he couldn't stop his abusive words. I couldn't believe the situation and remained silent even when insulted.
I apologize for the wait.
At the voice from behind, my boyfriend's expression changed. Without looking back, I got into the car as prompted. My name is Stella. As the daughter of the CEO of a company, I've been treated with care since childhood. And I was tired of adults changing their behavior when they saw my father behind me. Originally quiet and preferring to be alone, I started blending into the surroundings as I grew up, suppressing myself to avoid standing out. Even the friends I made through effort distanced themselves once they learned about my father's job. I used to dislike my father's profession, but as I entered university and studied business, my perspective changed. Through lectures, I began to understand the difficulty of achieving stable performance over the long term, like my father. I developed an interest in my father's company. Listening to his passion and thoughts about the company, I delved deeper into learning.
Stella has good university grades and seems to have a sense for business, so I'd entrust the company to her eventually.
That's what my father said. I thought, if I ever become the CEO, I'd like to create a company culture where employees can speak freely, regardless of titles or positions. Having felt lonely in my childhood, I admired an atmosphere where open communication was possible. It would be wonderful if I could shape the company that way when I become the CEO. The evening city streets were bustling with various people. I checked the clock. It was 6:50 p.m., and felt relieved. I always wanted to arrive before Lucas for our meetups. I took out a small mirror to adjust my bangs. I also checked the position of my hair accessory. As I tossed the mirror into my handbag, I noticed Lucas, dressed in a suit, slipping through the crowd. I waved to the smiling Lucas and greeted him. We entered our usual bar together. We ordered simple appetizers and wine, toasting to Friday nights spent chatting about work and trivial matters. I loved those casual evenings. Lucas and I started dating during our 4th year of university, and soon it will be 2 years. We got to know each other because we were in the same seminar. Lucas noticed the quiet me, who tended to fade into the background, and approached me. He's great at conversation and subtly lifts the mood around him. I feel lucky to be with him. Lucas said.
The head office's planning department is tough, and there's a lot of overtime. But the satisfaction makes it worth continuing.
After downing his wine, he seems quite tipsy. Being assigned to the planning department means they have high expectations for you. Lucas, you're amazing. Lucas asked.
How long will you stay in the factory job, Stella? If you get transferred to the head office, we can have lunch together.
After graduating from college, I requested my father, who is the company's CEO, to let me work in the factory. I had a strong desire to understand the field. I'd love to have lunch with Lucas, but I enjoy the factory work, and it suits me. Lucas replied.
Really? Wouldn't it suit Stella better to work at the head office dressed nicely instead of in overalls?
He peers at me, gauging my reaction. Not at all. Overalls are comfortable. Lucas, can we order more dishes? I'm quite hungry. Something feels off. Lately, Lucas seems like he wants to say something. Perhaps he found out I'm the CEO's daughter. Suddenly, a memory resurfaces. The friends who distanced themselves when they learned I was the boss's daughter. I can't reveal that to Lucas. He must never find out. Rocked by the sparsely populated train, I gazed out the window. Enjoying the view through the glass was my daily commute ritual. It's a sunny Monday. As the train progresses, the landscape changes from gray buildings to a lush green scene of interconnected trees. Crossing a large river, we're almost at the nearest station. The water's surface reflects a vivid blue, sparkling in the sunlight. I glance sideways as an elderly man and a puppy crossing the bridge shrink from view.
Stella, good morning. You're early.
Joseph says as I exit the ticket gate. Joseph, 2 years my senior, was the friendly colleague who spoke to me on my first day. We chat while heading to the factory. After preparing and reaching my workstation, the signal for the start of the workday sounds. Everything should proceed as usual. However, an unexpected incident occurred. It was just before the afternoon work began, right after lunch. At that moment, my father, the company's CEO, happened to be inspecting the premises. Exiting the break room, I bumped into my father, who asked me to relay a message to my mother. Apparently, he forgot his smartphone at home. He could send it from his computer, but he found it bothersome. Seeing my father off to the workshop, I turned around and, surprise! Joseph was there. He peeked through the half-open conference room door.
Wait, Stella, are you the CEO's daughter?
Panic sets in. I try to come up with an excuse, but nothing comes to mind. Regret floods over me for casually chatting with my father. Joseph will undoubtedly change his attitude toward me now. Word might spread throughout the factory, and everyone might look at me differently. Lost in my thoughts, Joseph speaks up.
Well, Stella, there's something I'd like your help with. There are several processes I'd like to change. Could you relay this to the CEO?
Despite his usual demeanor, I'm intrigued by the content of his request. What kind of processes? I ask. Joseph briefly explains, but the workday is about to start, so we decide to discuss it later. We rush to our respective workstations. Joseph didn't treat me any differently, and his attitude seemed to say, it's no big deal. Feeling the weight lift, I climb the stairs to the workshop. I'm sitting across from Joseph at the hamburger shop in front of the station. Our conversation from earlier in the day unexpectedly became quite lively. To put it simply, Joseph's wish is to give decision-making power to the field workers. As it stands, any changes to the established manual require approval from headquarters. This is necessary for even the most minor changes, and after the factory submits a request for approval, someone from headquarters comes to inspect. Then, it takes time to get consent. Often, by the time consent is received, the situation has changed, and the change is no longer needed, but it also takes effort to cancel the application. Joseph, having finished his hamburger and crumpling up the wrapper, says,
So, Stella, ask the president. Maybe that's impossible. But I'm still wondering if there's something we can do about it.
I hesitated because I wasn't sure if it was something I could ask my father to do. Well, it might be difficult to ask the president, but it seems like the system should be changed. Joseph agrees.
Right, you think so too?
Let's take action first. We'll document all past cases and submit them. Then we'll convey our wishes and have headquarters consider them. Joseph wonders.
I wonder if it will work.
I try to persuade the hesitant Joseph. Let's just give it our best shot. Joseph concedes.
Well, just talking about it won't change anything.
From the next day, we involved our supervisor and started gathering information throughout the factory. It was honestly tough to work on it during our daily tasks, but after persisting for several months, the documents were completed. We timed it with a general meeting at headquarters and handed it over to our supervisor, finally taking a breath of relief. As I was drinking juice during a break, a colleague approached me.
I heard the documents are finished. Good job.
They said. Since we had been going around the factory departments collecting information, everyone knew the situation. Finally, it's done. I hope it leads to some change. My colleague reassured me.
It'll definitely be okay. But I'm surprised by Stella's initiative. You really do have the president's blood in you.
How do you know about that? I asked.
Sorry, I pried it out of Joseph. I was curious why Stella got involved. But don't worry, I'm the only one who knows.
Is that so? I thought to myself, feeling mixed emotions but believing my colleague's words.
It would be great if Stella became the president. You're so serious and hardworking, and you really did your best for the factory this time.
Me, as president? That's impossible. I laughed it off, and my colleague laughed along. This person, who was laughing with wrinkles at the corners of their eyes, is a veteran who has been working at the factory for over 20 years. They, like Joseph, continued to treat me with the same unchanged attitude. It was a calm and bright unchangedness. Months passed, and when our supervisor returned from the general meeting at headquarters, they raised their voice and called everyone together. What's going on? The employees gathered, wondering. The supervisor announced, there's been a partial change in the authority at the site. Hearing these words, the employees began to murmur. I instinctively looked for Joseph. He was on the outskirts of the group, noticed my gaze, and gave a small wave in response. Not all of our hopes were realized, but it seemed like nearly half of them had been approved. That day, everyone took turns speaking to me, and I felt very happy. Since then, filled with a sense of accomplishment and even more motivation, I've been living fulfilling days. One day, my father called me to headquarters. Wondering why he would call me out of the blue, I left my afternoon work and headed to headquarters. When I entered the president's office, my father first praised me for my recent achievements. I hadn't spoken to my father about it, but he seemed to have looked into the situation. Apparently, the company's numbers had significantly improved because of this, and after laughing heartily, my father said to me with a serious expression,
Stella, you have the sense and vitality for management. How about you start taking over the president's duties more seriously?
Hearing my father's words, I thought I wanted to try. A workplace where employees' opinions are heard and improved, and where employees who have become easier to work with are lively. If I became president, I could move things on a larger scale. I could create an even more comfortable working environment. Of course, the responsibility would be heavier. My mind was almost made up, but I asked to think it over and went home that day. Alone in my room, I questioned myself. Can I really do this? Can I fulfill the responsibility? I had trouble falling asleep that night. The next morning, despite the lack of sleep, I visited my father at headquarters with a clear mind. About yesterday's conversation, please let me do it. I look forward to working with you. I asked deeply. My father said.
That's great, thank you.
And started discussing the future schedule.
What? Stella, you're becoming the CEO?
Joseph, please don't raise your voice too much. The break room during lunch only had Joseph and me. It seemed like the right moment, so I shared the news about my upcoming promotion to CEO.
Sorry. But seriously, becoming the CEO? Everyone will be surprised.
Exactly. I think I'll be transferred to the head office soon, and I'm struggling with how to explain it to everyone.
Why not just tell them the truth?
Talking about being the CEO's daughter is a bit scary. I mustered the courage to share past experiences, losing close friends, feeling distant from others, and my guarded childhood. Joseph listened empathetically and responded.
Maybe some people won't be able to interact with you the same way. It's hard to predict. But everyone knows about your hard work this time. I think they trust you, Stella. Besides, some people might not change their attitude after all.
I wondered if that was true. Joseph's words offered some comfort, but my heavy memories still weighed on me. Ultimately, I gave an ambiguous response. After work, I checked my phone and found a message from Lucas. They hadn't seen each other in a while. While I had been busy with paperwork for the head office, Lucas had entered a busy period. I needed to consider not only my colleagues at the factory but also Lucas. As the train rocked, I sighed. Could I really express the truth myself? What would happen if I did? The date for my transfer to the head office was confirmed. In a few weeks, I will leave the factory. I was unsure how to tell everyone, impulsively visited the document room. Dusty and filled with various files, I opened a cardboard box near the entrance and pulled out a thick bundle tied with black string. It was my work journal from the beginning. As I reviewed entries from my early days, when I was clueless and received patient guidance, when senior colleagues encouraged me, and when someone consoled me after making a mistake, my heart settled. It wasn't about being accepted or not, it was about expressing gratitude and sincerity. Determined, I left the document room. During Monday's morning assembly, I announced my transfer to my colleagues. Prompted by my supervisor, I stepped forward and greeted. As everyone wondered what I was about to say, Joseph and other colleagues who knew the situation watched from the back. I revealed that I was the CEO's daughter and would be taking over the company, expressing my gratitude. Surprisingly, I smoothly voiced what had troubled me. Though some were clearly shocked, Joseph congratulated me, and supportive voices followed. The atmosphere softened, and I felt relieved. I received heartfelt encouragement. Later, everyone invited me out for drinks. It was a celebration of my promotion to CEO, so we headed to a bar with a large group. The sheer number of attendees overwhelmed me, and I felt like crying. But it also gave me confidence. I was truly accepted. They had reserved a different place than usual for the occasion, and we all boarded the train together. After a 15-minute ride, we arrived at a bar known for its delicious food. We chatted aimlessly, and as the drinks flowed, a light, fluffy sense of joy enveloped us. When I checked the time, nearly 2 hours had passed. I decided to freshen up a bit and headed to the restroom. The bar was bustling at 8 p.m., and every seat was taken. As I looked around, intrigued by the novelty of the new place, I suddenly heard a familiar voice. Instinctively, I turned my attention toward it. The voice seemed to be berating someone. Despite wanting to leave immediately, my body moved toward the table where the voice came from. It felt as if I were detached from myself, experiencing a strange sensation. Lucas's voice reached my ears.
She might have kept it hidden. but everyone in our seminar knew. If she weren't the CEO's daughter, I wouldn't have dated her. Such a plain girl.
At a table with 4 suited individuals, there he was, Lucas. He continued.
She works in the factory, and I can't believe she's really the CEO's daughter. Her drab attire doesn't inspire me to take her to a nice place. If she invited me to her mansion, maybe I'd feel more motivated.
His words hit me like a punch. I couldn't comprehend what was happening. Frozen, I stood there, and Lucas noticed me. Clearly, he'd been drinking heavily. His resentment and animosity toward me were palpable, leaving me immobilized.
Do you even think you're worth anything? Your only value is being the CEO's daughter.
Lucas glared at me. Unsteadily, he approached, holding a glass in his right hand. Without hesitation, he tilted the glass, splashed beer on my head. The liquid drenched my hair and face, dripping onto the floor. His words continued.
We wasted years together. Let's break up. I'm done with you.
I could only nod in response to Lucas's angry outburst. Quietly, I distanced myself from him, informing my colleagues that I'd head home first. Thankfully, they were too engrossed in their drinks to notice. As I stepped out of the bar, the cool night air touched my cheeks. The droplets in my hair cooled, and the chill reached my scalp, making me shiver. Reluctant to take the train in this state, I reluctantly called for a car. When I became CEO, my father provided me with a private car. The driver was someone I'd known since childhood, and the familiarity of the car offered some comfort. I stared at the passing roads, wanting to feel at ease. That's when I saw someone emerge from the bar's entrance.
You're still here? Looking shabby as ever. Honestly, you're a pitiful sight.
Supported by what appeared to be colleagues, Lucas staggered toward me. My heart was in tatters, unable to bear any more of his words. How could he be so cruel?
I apologize for keeping you waiting, President.
A voice comes from behind.
President!
Lucas looks surprised and gazes at me.
Please get in from this side.
Prompted to the rear seat, I stepped forward.
Wait a minute! What I said earlier was just a joke. If you had told me you became the president, we could have continued our relationship. Let's keep going!
I glance over my shoulder at Lucas, who is desperately trying to convey something. No emotions surface within me. If anything, there's a faint sense of discomfort.
The president is tired, so please go away.
Confirming that I've boarded, the driver closes the door. As the car starts moving, my tear ducts collapse. Tears flow one after another, streaming down my cheeks and falling onto my knees. What did I like about him? To think he was that kind of person. After crying for a while, I started feeling calm. Suddenly, I realized it was my fault. Being in a relationship without showing my true self was an unreasonable idea. With that thought, I begin to feel relieved. I wipe away my tears with a handkerchief and gaze out the window. The starry sky has occasional clouds drifting across it. It feels like being underwater. The gentle sway of the waves, as if drifting along, is soothing. I think about my factory colleagues. And then about Joseph. Being accepted for who I truly am is incredibly reassuring. Rubbing my swollen eyes from crying too much, I fall asleep just like that. A year and a half has passed since becoming the president. Even after transferring to the headquarters, I visit the factory under the guise of inspections whenever nostalgia strikes. Today, I brought some treats as usual.
Despite saying it's tough, Stella manages everything smoothly. It's impressive.
It's not a big deal. I've been receiving support from everyone. As I distribute the snacks, I feel my face soften. Since becoming the president, my factory colleagues still call me Stella. It feels like coming back home. Lost in thought, I suddenly noticed Joseph approaching.
By the way, what about our honeymoon?
His sudden private question surprises me, and I glance around. The colleagues we were chatting with earlier have returned to their workstations. Well, I haven't announced it yet, so be careful. Since transferring, I've become even closer to my factory colleagues, and Joseph and I started dating. We got engaged last month.
Don't worry. I made sure no one was around. Where do you want to go? Maybe overseas?
I'd love to be by the sea. My mouth moves faster than my thoughts. For some reason, I've always wanted to go to the beach with Joseph.
If it's the beach, maybe an island would be nice. I'll look into it.
Joseph smiles. I'm looking forward to it. In the bright light, sitting on the shore and gazing at the sea with Joseph, what colors will it be? Just imagining it makes my heart race, and my cheeks relax.
How did you like this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Well then, let's meet in the next video.